Forum in Sandton today. The utility has been struggling to collect revenue from customers who have failed to honor their payments. Morero says the mounting debt is seriously affecting the city's overall revenue collection.
Of course, the big challenge is that City Power is currently sitting at over 10.2 billion electricity debt. And as City Power, we deeply value the relationship with these key customers because they are partners in driving Johannesburg growth, job creation and economic resilience.
The Madlanga Commission of Inquiry has heard how tender tycoon Vusimuzi Matlala allegedly made startling claims to investigators who arrested him in May. A recording of Matlala confessing to a number of acts to investigators was played before the Madlanga Commission this afternoon. Witness C, one of the arresting officers, told the inquiry Matlala said he gave suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibia 300,000 rand as a wedding gift for his son. Oren Singh reports.
Vusimuzi Matlala allegedly attended the wedding of the son of suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibia. Matlala arrived in a Rolls Royce and gifted Sibia 300,000 rand in cash as a wedding gift.
Yeah, but remember, I will withdraw maybe 500 and then maybe can say 300.
When questioned about how he knew Sibia, Matlala responded. According to the evidence leaders, a transcript of Matlala's 4-hour recorded conversation with investigators will be made public. Witness C concluded his testimony and the commission is set to resume on Monday. Arun Singh, Eyewitness News.
In the Western Cape, Khayelitsha residents say they are determined to change the idea of Cape Town as a tale of two cities. Close to 1,000 Khayelitsha residents, supported by regional ANC members, marched to the Cape Town Civic Centre today. They handed over a memorandum of demands, which includes access to running water, electricity supply and road infrastructure. ANC chairperson in the Dula Omar region, Diti Nichido, says multiple wards in Khayelitsha have been without these services since the late 80s.
We are very, very much not happy about this because it is a sign of a mayor who has no to face the community he claims to be leading. The city of Cape Town is an executive system of municipality. Now, when residents rises up in the number that they are in, regardless of how low do you think of them, it's only courteous and politically responsible for anybody to receive them yourself.
And US President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping have agreed to calm the trade war between China and the United States. The trade war roiled global markets, with Washington cutting some tariffs and Beijing committing to keep supplies of critical rare earths flowing. According to the US leader, the talks yielded an extendable one-year deal on China's supply of crucial rare earths. The materials are essential for sophisticated electronic components across a range of industries.
All of the rare earth has been settled. And that's for the world. I mean, worldwide. China is that whole situation. That roadblock is gone now. There's no roadblock at all on rare earth.
In your financials, gold is trading at $3,959.04 an ounce. The rand is 17.20 to the dollar, 22.69 to the pound, and 19.97 to the euro. Brent crude is at $64.55 a barrel.
In your sport, Australia seized control in their World Cup semi-final against India. Danny Jordan confirms that Happy Desiree Ellis has finally signed a new Banyana contract. And Marseille midfielder stable after on-pitch collapse.
A partly cloudy Friday is in store for Gauteng tomorrow, with afternoon showers expected. Johannesburg drops to overnight lows of around 13 degrees, peaking at 22. Both Pretoria and Vereeniging drop to 15 and peak at 24, while Cape Town will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy with a gentle west-northwesterly breeze at a low of 16 and a high of 22. The top story on EWN this hour: Johannesburg City Power is owed more than 10 billion rand in unpaid electricity bills by residential and commercial customers.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app. EWN Traffic.
Well, at this stage, wet, slippery roads in rainy Pretoria, so please maintain a safe following distance and keep your headlights on. Still in Pretoria, we still have bumper-to-bumper traffic. This is on the N1 in both directions between the Brakfontein interchange and the R21. Irene, also slow-moving traffic approaching the intersection of Nalmepius Drive and Main Road. While in Tembisa, traffic is looking much better now. There's free-flowing traffic. This is in the Tembisa area on the R21 northbound between the R25 Parsfontein off-ramp and Olifantsfontein Road. However, Boksburg, there's still about a 20-minute delay heading towards Benoni. N12 eastbound between Croft Road and Atlas Road due to an earlier accident. Sunwood Park also roadworks causing about a 30-minute delay. N17 east between Osborne Road and Carnival City. In the mother city, there's also slow-moving traffic. M3 southbound approaching Clipper Road and also bumper-to-bumper traffic on the M5 southbound. This is heading towards Pinelands Road. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud sponsor of the ABSA Africa Financial Markets Index 2025. Good evening. I'm Stephen Grootes, 7 minutes after 6. Quite a busy day in a way. A lot of people, I think, watching and waiting and in some ways hoping for some kind of end to the trade war between China and the US. And we saw, of course, the US President Donald Trump and the Chinese President Xi Jinping speaking together in South Korea. And yes, Trump said that out of 10, they got, the meeting was at 12, but really it kind of looks like nothing big has been sorted out. Maybe that's the best we can hope for, actually, and let them continue to do the negotiations and the chat and all of the rest behind the scenes. But you would maybe like, when you've got these meetings, when you've got handshakes, maybe something bigger will come out of it. I think there might be a little bit of disappointment about it. A strong update, I thought, from Dis-Chem. We'll speak to their CEO, Roy Moraes, in just a moment. Looking forward to that conversation. The Public Investment Corporation, they've been talking about the re-industrialisation of South Africa, how much money is needed. Not as much as you would think necessarily, but what they're suggesting is that there could really be a big change. But they're quite optimistic. They talk about South Africa's strong industrial base. My first thought was, but aren't we about to lose our only sort of long steels business? Isn't that about to go? So, I thought that was a bit strange. We'll put that to them in a few moments from now. Also, of course, look at the issue around gold and very interesting comments from the World Gold Council about demand for gold higher than it's ever been, which I thought was interesting. And we kind of see that. And see Phumelela Zondi before 7 o'clock, the first layoffs that we're seeing as a result of AI. I thought all of that was really important. Good to hear from you tonight. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and voice notes on 072 702 1702.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
I don't know if it's just that I've got a little bit older, but I think this is actually a reflection on how the world has changed. When Walmart first bought into South Africa, and they did it through buying a part of Massmart and then eventually buying the whole thing, it was a big deal. Everybody talked about it. We talked about the change in retail. Now, Walmart opening Walmart-branded stores. They confirmed today Clearwater Mall in Roodepoort will be the first one. And my reaction is kind of meh. I think that's a reflection of how retail has changed. There was a time when it would actually be quite difficult to get certain things. And by a time, 10 years ago, you would go to the United States or wherever and see things that you wouldn't really see here. They'll be quite difficult to get. You'd buy them somewhere else because they were cheaper. Amazon came along. Take-A-Lot came along. That's a big factor, I think, and changed that. And as it happens, I was actually in a Walmart in Arkansas back in September, not very long ago. And my first thought when I walked in, literally my first sense of it, when you sort of see the light and the smell, was, oh, I'm in a big Macro. That's really all I'm in. And the pricing is different and the books are very different. And I don't think Macro sells that many guns. But otherwise, that's kind of it. It just smelt and sounded like a Macro. So I don't know how much excitement there really is around Walmart coming to South Africa. A few years ago, maybe there would have been a lot. Not so much now. I'll tell you this, though. They say they are going to bring in some products that you don't see here very often. My understanding is that is going to be American confectionery, by which I mean sweets and chocolates, which means that there's another whole long list of things for your kids to get addicted to.
702.
702.
Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
Dis-Chem confirming it's hiking its dividend by 9% for the 6 months to the end of August. Group revenue is up 8.7%, also investing a bit more in its life insurance business, and also what it calls ex-Bigley Labs. That's essentially their operation to improve their customer experience. Roy Moraes is the CEO at the Dis-Chem Group. Roy, good to talk to you again. Good evening. You've got a lot more revenue coming into your business. Are you able to tell if this is from new customers, or are the same customers spending more money when they're in your stores?
Evening, Stephen. So the honest answer is it's a combination of both. So as a function of our new stores, we obviously get access to new customers as we extend our network. But at the same time, we do see our loyalty basket growing, which by implication means that the same customers are spending a little more in our stores, and specifically our ecosystem, which is something that we're very focused on. So, how do we get consumer spending across more than just is a physical store?
I mean, I presume you can almost plot on a graph in advance. You open a new store in a new place, and you can start to see how sales tick up, and some customers will just use that store because they've used previous stores before, and some will be new.
Yes, you can. So, I mean, there's a maturity profile or maturity curve that's actually really associated with how we capture scripts more than it is just normal customer foot traffic that comes with a new store. And then you quickly distinguish, to your point, customers that are moving from other stores or customers that are kind of engaging with the brand for the first time.
Your retail expenses increased by nearly 12%, and that's quite a significant figure. What are you spending that money on?
So core retail outside of the investment that we made in Life and ex-Bigley Labs, which is our innovation hub, that we launched in December, was actually muted at just over 9% against total income at 10%, which meant core retail delivered on the back of positive operating leverage around 25% profitability growth. But I mean, we've always, and you kind of alluded to in your last segment, for all intents and purposes, retail is effectively becoming commoditized. If you think about the globalization that's happening, it's coming down to price points. South African consumers are super value conscious, and I guess when you start to think about that and how we think about our role is the way that you formulate kind of your strategic ambitions needs to be around how you deliver healthcare products and services, which are fundamentally more sticky than traditional retail or general merchandise.
I mean, ex-Bigley, your labs, what are you expecting to get for the money that you're investing? Is it just information about customers, which you're then able to leverage, or is there something deeper than that? And I realize that, data is the new gold.
So I mean, data is one of the things that is owned by ex-Bigley Labs. Ex-Bigley Labs is certainly not just a data hut. So the reality is, if you are going to change a retail machine the size of ours, that does north of 35 billion rand in revenue, for example, and the way that it executes, you actually need to give innovation priority. Someone needs to live and breathe innovation. It can't be something that someone else does, in addition to running a store or in addition to running finance or in addition to running, a general kind of support system for the group. And that was the idea behind ex-Bigley Labs. So it's really got two ambitions. The one is, how does it improve the customer experience? And then how does it improve metrically the way that we do traditional retail? So that could be anything from reimagining the way that a scripting process is done. If you think about it, I mean, you've been around long enough to know that the scripting process, for example, hasn't changed for 2 or 3 decades. You engage with the same kind of pharmacist, the same kind of capturing happens, and it's a very expensive cost to serve. So how do you reimagine that with like a different approach to process design and take out costs so you can pass on value to consumers? That's really the function of ex-Bigley Labs.
Your main focus at the moment, I suppose, is still your Better Rewards, your rewards program. You spoke to us when it launched. How's take-up been?
So honestly, and I feel very proud to say, it's been incredible. We're obviously only 10 days into the program or 9 days into the program, but delivering above our expectation on all metrics. So that would have been volume growth that we're seeing from participating Better Reward brands, the acquisition of new loyalty customers, that people that have not engaged with the brand is up on a daily basis around 250%. And I think just anecdotally, which is also something important to kind of ingest and listen to, the feedback that we've received from the market around the level of discounts that they're seeing and kind of the loyalty that buys, for lack of a better term, is something that was at the core of the design philosophy for Better Rewards. How do we ensure that more of South Africa's healthcare basket, more of the consumer healthcare basket is spent within our ecosystem, and that's the kind of feedback that we're getting. So as it stands, very early on, but super, super positive.
I mean, these reward schemes, we know how important they are to groups like yours. Your main competitor has one that's very popular as well. Do you think there's anything that makes your scheme stand out, that offers value that others don't? Because everybody has them, but they're kind of a competition in their own right now.
Yeah, so I think the way that we think about rewards is fundamentally different to how a traditional retailer thinks about it, and it was born out of Ex-Bigly Labs, so a different approach to rewards. I mean, the way that we think about rewards is it's effectively an always-on promotional mechanism, right? And the difference in our program is that it's 140 of South Africa's most loved brands, so 10,000 articles or 10,000 products in our stores. These are the things that have been selected analytically that are shopped the most frequently in South Africa by the most number of people. So they are stable in the consumer basket. And they're always on promotion in South African retail. Our reward program then heavily discounts the promotion price. So on top of promotion, you get an always on 10% base discount for no fee. And then depending on how you engage with our ecosystem, so if you shop our pharmacy and you invest in preventative healthcare, or you buy your chronic medication, that 10% goes to 15%. And, with our arrangement with Capitec, if you pay with a Capitec card, it goes to 20%. So if you think about something commoditized like a nappy, that price point exists everywhere on promotion across South Africa. You're now getting access to something that is a commoditized product at 20% lower. So it is fundamentally different to what exists in South African retail today.
Roy Moraes, thanks very much indeed. The CEO at the Dis-Chem Group. 17 minutes after 6.
7:02. Stephen is on X.
At Stephen Grootes.
The Public Investment Corporation putting out quite a bullish case, I thought, for investing money in the re-industrialisation of South Africa, a research paper which has been co-written with Oxford University. The paper says that if investment in industrialisation was doubled over the next 5 years, it would create 250,000 jobs. Jeffrey Nolting is the senior economist at the PIC and co-author of the paper. Jeffrey, good evening. If we were to double investment in industrialization, which sectors, where would we need to spend the money? Which sectors would actually be the places that would generate these jobs?
Good evening, Stephen, to you and your listeners. So I think the rationale of the paper was to look at how we can use particularly institutional capital, such as the PRC. And to answer your question, the main sectors where we really believe is a lot of opportunity is in automotive, as well as agriculture and mining, particularly mining beneficiation.
I'm a bit surprised to hear automotive because, China has too much car making capacity. Aren't we in a situation where you would end up having to compete with someone that has to shut down half of their electric car manufacturing capacity at the moment?
Yeah, I think more of a long-term getting through the current global business cycle, there's certainly opportunities there. I think from South Africa, we're uniquely positioned from a critical minerals positioning. We obviously are competing globally in a globally decarbonisation world. And I think South Africa has really set itself up as a destination for green capital. We've seen that recently with the current EU deal. And I think if we can focus on, reindustrializing our economy, I think we can, anchor battery and hydrogen supply chains both locally and then get that extended to global supply chains.
Would it require a bit more than just investment, but maybe some policy shifts as well? I don't want to remind you, Jeffrey, but the mining industry has a complaint or two about the way government manages that sector.
Absolutely. So I think the real problem is where we are is why we find ourselves in the current situation is, we have dealt with very outdated policy, and that certainly needs quite a bit of work. But also, we had massive issues with our energy infrastructure, and we are starting to see that really recuperate. Yes, I think maybe the policy certainly needs a bit more work and fine-tuning, but we have seen a number of political parties putting out their economic plans, and they all seem very keen on, increased private participation. The key message from our paper is really that, we don't need more government, but rather that South Africa was sitting on this latent capacity in these sectors, and we believe that can really unlock differentiated risk-adjusted returns. I think there's really a huge mispricing where South Africa is reforming from we believe, a very strong base, and I think that now's the time to invest.
So the reforms we see from Operation Vulindlela, electricity, all of those things you think are now starting to have an impact, and in fact, if you wanted to invest, this would be the moment because you get the best outcome over time.
Well, we're already seeing the huge benefits of the success of Operation Vulindlela. Roughly about 80% of those programs are either completed or are on track. They've made huge inroads, particularly in the financial sector recently. We've just come off the grey list, but also, keeping the lights on. And I think South Africa is really trending in the right direction. I think there's a huge inappropriate risk perception of South Africa that we're just some frontier economy, when in reality, we've got very credible institutions, an independent central bank, we've got strong rules of law, and a credible fiscal policy. Well, we'll see on the 12th of November. But really what we think is that, we aren't rebuilding from scratch. We've got a very strong base. And if we can get, as the PIC, we've got, over 3 trillion rands worth of assets under management, which, equates to about 40% of GDP. What we can do is we can really de-risk a lot of the early stage sectors, that commercial banks and maybe foreign investors are a little bit hesitant to invest in. But we really believe that the time is now, and, we can use our assets, to really signal, what kind of industrial policy that we're going for.
You say that we have a strong or an excellent industrial base. Isn't there an argument to say we need the investment now? I made the argument earlier that, ArcelorMittal wants to shut down, that in fact our excellent industrial base in the way you describe it might be at risk. If we don't move now, it'll get less excellent.
Well, excellent. I think it's more like the level where we're sitting at now is we don't have to build everything from new. We have a lot of existing infrastructure. And now, I guess, now's sort of the country's at a crossroads where we need to make decisive decisions to, attract capital and get the economy going again.
Thank you very much indeed. Jeffrey Nolting, a senior economist at the PIC, co-author of that research paper. Fascinating research, also done in conjunction with Oxford University. 23 minutes after 6.
Beyond every boardroom is a story waiting to be written. A story of a business and its potential, of a community that thrives, a hospital that serves, and energy that powers millions of dreams. It's a story that only gets better with a partner that has the expertise and solutions to make it a reality. At Absa CIB, we are invested in your story, and we invite you to write it with us, because your story matters. Absa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
If this ad caught your ear, imagine what Prime Media can do for your business. With SA's leading media company, your message reaches the right audience across radio, digital audio, video, and display. The Prime Impact Sales Event is coming to Joburg, 3 to 7 November, and Cape Town, 10 to 13 November. Register today for a free demo commercial, a custom campaign, and unbeatable annual partnerships. Seats are limited. Secure yours now at primeimpact.co.za.
702 and the Dis-Chem Foundation are shining the spotlight on the health matters you want to know more about. Here's what we explored this month.
Head of Outreach at Holy Rosary School, Yvette Bibis. It's about the importance of sight and access through reading glasses for those who need them most.
We came across Lens of Hope in Cape Town. They collect old frames, refurbish them, and give them to people who can't afford to buy their own. Within 2 weeks of us starting, it just went countrywide. Today, what we've got on our premises are 4,200 pairs of glasses.
Well, 4-2 is an extraordinary achievement. Good luck with the work.
In Conversation on Afternoon Drive with John Perlman. Brought to you by the Dis-Chem Foundation, caring for the community on 702.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Viv Govinder's portfolio manager at Rand Swiss. Viv, good evening. There seems to be a bit of a sort of muted reaction to this meeting between Trump and Xi. There was a bit of expectation around maybe there'll be a trade deal, and yes, things are a little better, but I suppose there's no certainty on anything.
Yeah, look, I mean, we don't know for certain what's going to happen here, but I do think a deal is likely to happen. Trump likes to make these deals and show his brilliance as a negotiator, to illustrate, he's the only guy that's able to make these deals, even though often the deal that we get in the end of the day is not much better than, what would have been possible without the drama at the start. That being said, I do think that, longer term, there is obviously, serious fundamental differences between the U.S. and China in terms of what they want in the world, and not just about token things like, for instance, Taiwan, but I mean about fundamental things about who gets to run the world economy, about who gets to basically decide the rules of global trade and so on. The U.S. obviously has been the dominant power for such a long time, has gotten used to being the number one. That the Chinese basically rising up is going to face a lot of resistance from that, and I think even though we might have a deal here, I don't think we're going to see normalized relations with the U.S. and China. It's because the U.S. can't afford for China to trade normally with the rest of the world, especially with things like artificial intelligence, etc.
And China's probably getting better and better at the trade game. They're just learning more tools, as we've seen with rare earths. The U.S. Federal Reserve last night, so yes, an interest rate cut. Pretty much almost everyone expected that. A bit of a warning from Powell, though, that there might not be another one this year.
Yeah, look, I mean, I do think that the Fed has to be cautious. We are seeing inflation in the U.S., even though it came slightly lower than expected, still at about 3% CPI number. That is well above what the hope for level is. At the same time, yes, we are seeing also signs that, unemployment is probably going to have a bit of a spike. We've seen again, with regards to AI, we saw, Amazon come out and fire, quite a number of people, and maybe there's the total maybe twice as much as the initial thing, about 30,000 people or so in total. There's also been a leaked report about Amazon looking at not having as many as 600,000 people on their payroll by 2032 as might otherwise have been the case. And I think also we are seeing other signs out there that there's some various weaknesses in the U.S. economy at the moment. But like I said, the Fed doesn't know what's happening, unfortunately, and not much better than we do. And that means that they are going to be very cautious about trying to do anything around, that's too aggressive, just because they just don't know what the actual long-term impact is going to be like.
And at the same time, Trump again yesterday, and I think Scott Percent today, are putting pressure on them to cut more. I mean, that's not going to make it any easier.
No, it's definitely not. I mean, look, the thing is that, ever since we got rid of the gold standard, the only thing that keeps any kind of currency in the world at any stable level is the credibility of that Reserve Bank. There's nothing back in the US dollar besides the Federal Reserve's backing. There's nothing back in the South African rand besides the Reserve Bank's backing. And if we stop believing in the Federal Reserve or the Reserve Bank and the power that they have to control spending and to basically, keep things in order, or keep the economy basically ticking on at the right speed, not overheating and so on, I think that's going to be quite negative for any currency going forward, even the US dollar.
Some tech earnings out, some of them not as good as maybe had been hoped for.
Yeah, the good, the bad, the ugly is how I think we term it. The good is, Alphabet/Google. The bad is Microsoft, and the ugly is Meta. And I think that's what the market's reacting. We had like a 4-5% move up for Google. Microsoft about 2% down, but Meta has fallen quite significantly. I do think that this is a case of obviously all these companies have done really well in the last little while, but Meta I think has been a bit of a laggard. Mark Zuckerberg has been incredibly aggressive on AI, without much, success. And I think the one key point of that, he had a person in charge, Jan LeCun, one of the godfathers of AI. He's put a new person in charge, Alexander Wang, effectively, a young, hip guy who's basically, very talented, very gifted. But maybe is acting in a very, impulsive way in some ways. Because the one thing they did recently was fire a whole bunch of people from their AI division to, streamline it, make it more efficient. And all I could see on social media networks that are following AI is every single AI company is offering these guys jobs. If you got layered by Meta's AI division, you will just be snapped up by every single other AI company out there, showing that maybe this was this idea. But yeah, I do think Meta's foray to AI, the aggressiveness that they're doing, as well as their lack of, I think, leadership and showing distinguishing leadership in the particular area is kind of harming the company at the moment.
Viv Govinder, thanks so much. Portfolio manager at Rand Swiss. Really appreciate the time. Just gone 6:30. Time for the latest Eyewitness News in Gisa. Good evening. Paul Mashatile and the death of Chief Hilbert Lutuli.
Thanks, Stephen. Deputy President Paul Mashatile has welcomed the KZN High Court ruling, which found that the death of former ANC leader Chief Albert Luthuli was not an accident. Following a reopened inquest, the court has found that Luthuli was beaten to death by apartheid police. It has also set aside the findings of a 1967 inquest, which found that he was hit by a goods train and no one was ever held responsible. Mashatile says authorities must leave no stone unturned when they investigate what really killed Luthuli. He reacted to the judgment while responding to oral questions in the National Assembly today.
Just to welcome the decision of the Pietermaritzburg Court in making a decision that the death of our former president, Chief Luthuli, was not an accident. We welcome that, and I do hope that the authorities will leave no stone unturned to get to the truth.
A car chase and a subsequent shooting left 2 people dead in the north of Johannesburg today. One of the deceased, a taxi boss from the Alexandra Randburg Midrand Taxi Association, and the other is believed to be one of his bodyguards. Jabulile Mbata has more.
The drama began on Viola Road this afternoon when a 4x4 with 4 occupants was shot at. Those inside the vehicle are believed to be the security escorts of taxi boss Molefi Moikeletsi. One of the occupants was killed in the shooting incident. Police spokesperson Limakatso Nebuli.
And the information is still a bit sketchy, but the preliminary investigations suspect that it might be taxi related, as some of the victims, they are members of a taxi association, a local taxi association in the side.
Police have since cleared the scene. Jabulile Mbata, Eyewitness News, Marlborough.
Water expert Jeff Baloyi says viable solutions to tackle the challenge of water loss in the city of Johannesburg have been identified. Baloyi was speaking at Rand Water's WaterWise outreach program in Soweto today, where the utility and its partners were informing residents about the benefits of water conservation. He says implementing hydraulic models can help detect and pinpoint the exact locations of water leaks, which will help the metro save water. He adds this is just one method the metro can use to address the challenges of water loss.
So we look on what we can call hydraulic modeling, where we look in terms of the non-revenue water. So we are busy doing a lot of piloting around that space and looking in terms of the detection of these leaks and everything, so that we have an advanced system which we can report into.
Baloyi says they are working with Joburg Water to address the ongoing challenges in the province.
Joburg Water has been looking also in terms of the reclamation of water, so which is very important, because that meaning that now you are creating another alternative source of water, which, as me and you will speak now, it does not exist. So should Joburg Water crack that, meaning it also add into the amount of water which they are receiving within coming from the rainwater.
And in the Western Cape, Goodwood Prison is under scrutiny following the death of an inmate and the attempted suicide of an official. This follows an unannounced visit by Parliament's Correctional Service Committee Chairperson Khomotso Ramolobeng yesterday. Another Cape Town prison, Pollsmoor, is also facing an investigation after 2 inmates were killed during a stabbing attack on warders, 2 of whom were wounded on Wednesday morning. Lauren Isaacs has more on yesterday's surprise inspection.
Parliament's Correctional Services Committee Chairperson Khomotso Ramolobeng has paid particular attention to Goodwood Prison's hospital section, the firearms and ammunitions storeroom, and a cell occupied by an inmate who recently died of natural causes. Interviewing inmates about the incident, it's emerged 3 others also fell ill with stomach-related conditions since that fatality, while the outcome of an autopsy is still outstanding. The parliamentarian has also followed up on information that an official who had attempted suicide allegedly signed out a firearm at the facility. However, examining the register, she's found discrepancies with the sign-out signature, corroborating information received by the committee that the firearm was not lawfully signed out by the official. Ramolobeng says the committee will need to engage the Correctional Services Department on these discrepancies, as they do not paint a good picture. Lauren Isaacs, Eyewitness News.
A partly cloudy Friday is in store for Gauteng tomorrow, with afternoon thundershowers expected, lows of between 13 and 15 degrees and highs of between 22 and 24, while Cape Town will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy at a low of 16 and a high of 22. The top story on EWN, Deputy President Paul Mashatile has welcomed the KZN High Court ruling, which found the death of former ANC leader Chief Albert Luthuli was not an accident.
EWN Traffic.
Well, we still have wet, slippery conditions in rainy Pretoria, so please maintain a safe following distance and keep your headlights on. Still in Pretoria, Irene traffic heavily backed up still. This is on Main Road. Expect about a 30-minute delay approaching Nelmapiers Drive. Tembisa, bumper-to-bumper traffic heading towards Irene. That's R21 northbound between the R25 Vastfontein off-ramp and Olifantsfontein Road. Boksburg roadwork still causing heavy delays. This is heading towards Brakpan. We are in the Sunwood Park area. That's N17 eastbound between Osborne Road and Carnival City. Still in Boksburg, traffic remains heavily backed up. N12 eastbound between Croft Road and Atlas Road due to an earlier accident. While in the Mother City, expect some delays. M3 southbound, this is approaching Clipper Road. There's also slow-moving traffic on the M5 southbound heading towards Pinelands. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
At Auto & General, we understand your business is built on more than just vehicles. It's your stock, tools and equipment, and the premises where you work. Auto & General Business Insurance is designed for businesses like yours, protecting your assets against fire, theft, storms, and other unexpected events. To protect your livelihood, visit autogen.co.za and get an obligation-free business insurance quote. Auto & General, never not there. Auto & General is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Running a business can feel like a solo mission. I mean, you've got the hustle. If only your office Wi-Fi was your employee of the month. Turn on your success with Telkom Business, the partner that always shows up. Get a reliable 25 by 25 megabytes per second connection with Stream Connect Fiber for only 489 rands per month.
This summer, your business deserves the best. Visit telkom.co.za/business for deals that connect your business. T's and C's apply. Telkom Business. Possible begins here.
Small businesses are anything but small. They're the backbone of our communities. The dreamers, the doers, the ones who keep Mzansi moving forward. That's why 702 and Capitec Business Banking are putting them in the spotlight. Every Thursday between 6 and 8 p.m. Catch Small Business Focus with Capitec, where we showcase the hustle, heart, and the secrets to thriving in today's economy. Your vision matters, and with Capitec, you're never building it alone. Small Business Focus with Capitec, the business bank for everyone. Thursdays between 6 and 8 p.m. on 702. Capitec Bank is an authorized FSP 46669.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
22 minutes to 7. Well, I was making the point earlier that something has changed in retail. Walmart is coming, but okay, so what? I think seems to be the reaction. I say that's because 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, when they first sort of came, you'd expect to see new things you couldn't get before. Now, with the way that retail has moved, you just don't see that. Voice notes coming through on the whole issue of Walmart tonight.
Hey, Cape Talk. This is Alvin from Cape Town. Just a funny anecdote, a trip that my wife and I took to Mexico about 5 years ago, and we were staying with Mexican hosts, and we brought a whole bunch of gifts. And on the first day, we were walking along down in Mexico City, and we saw Walmart and headed on inside. Same thing, with much enthusiasm for the lovely products we would find. And what should we find? But as we walked through the main door, not 10,000 stacks of pallets of Amarilla, which rendered pretty much the rest of our trip and all the different hosts we were staying with. Our gifts were largely ignored and frowned upon when we described to them the wonderful Amarilla fruit and the wonders of elephants eating these wonderful fruit in South Africa, and how rare this gift was, when every darn shop we walked into, every Walmart presented us with the same huge display of Amarilla. So yes, indeed, I think it's nothing that you can't get anywhere else in this globalized economy that we live in. take care. I don't think it's going to push the dial in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, thank you for that. It is actually, I mean, it's impossible now. If you're going from South Africa, what do you take that is South African? I mean, in some places, biltong's just going to get you into trouble. And also it's food and it's meat and da-da-da-da-da. What else do you take? I mean, does anyone know? I mean, do you take something gold from Eswatini? That'll probably get you into trouble. I don't know. What do you take, frankly? I mean, maybe you've got a good idea, actually. If you're going to a foreign place, be it Beijing, Lagos, Sydney, what would you take that is uniquely South African? World Cup staying here, by the way.
EWN Sport.
Tolakela, I suppose you're not really allowed to take you. I mean, just to sort of, display South Africa.
Unfortunately not, Stephen. And we start at the Women's World Cup. That's where India are chasing 339 for victory against Australia in the second semi-final. An update from their innings sees them on 267 for 4 in the 42nd over. They need 72 runs in 52 balls for victory. Batting is Gosh on naught alongside Rodriguez on 99. Of course, the winner will face South Africa in Sunday's final after they thrashed England by 125 runs. Marazan Cup took a career best 5 for 20 in that victory to become the highest wicket taker in the tournament's history with 44 scalps. Her 181 wickets in ODIs is also the third highest in the format.
I feel like the past semi-finals I probably haven't been at my best and have not contributed the way I should have. So I'm really happy that tonight I could make a difference in the result. But look, again, it's just the love of the sport. That's why we play, because we just love cricket so much, and I absolutely love playing for South Africa.
For the men, they take on Pakistan in the second T20 tomorrow, looking to seal a series win. Quentin de Kock has discussed the elder statesman role he now has in the side. That's after he reversed his decision to retire from white ball cricket.
Come back, and I think a couple of the youngsters have been asking me questions on how to improve their game. So I'm happy to be here and help where I can. Kind of like what Dale did for me. If I make an impact in their careers, it will be great. If not, then I'm sorry, then I tried type thing. So it's great. I think it's very different, me coming back as one of the older guys. I've always been used to being one of the young guys in the team. The other day we were talking about it, myself and Reza, and it felt like the other day we were just playing the 19 cricket, and now we're the two oldest guys in the team.
SAFA President Danny Jordan has confirmed that Banyana head coach Desiree Ellis has finally signed her new 4-year contract and can now start preparing for the next Women's Africa Cup of Nations. Banyana qualified for next year's tournament without Ellis on the bench as assistant coach Tina Sonkembule took charge of their 2-1 aggregate win over DR Congo. The latest contract will see Ellis's tenure as coach to 13 years, having been appointed in 2016. And Egyptian media is reporting that Orlando Pirates have filed a complaint to CAF that could see them reinstated to the Champions League ahead of the group stage draw. St. Eloi Lupopo coach Guy Bukasa was allegedly not supposed to sit on the bench as he's serving a 6-game cap ban following a disciplinary issue that dates back to his previous role as DR Congo coach at the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. Additionally, forward Wanet Kashala is said to have featured despite being ineligible as he was registered late for the competition. Tolagele Mganga, Eyewitness News Sport.
Huawei Watch GT6 Series, 2025's must-have smartwatch, introducing the king of power. Up to 21 days of unstoppable battery life in a sleek titanium and ceramic design that's as strong as it's stylish. The Trackmaster with 24/7 heart rate tracking, sleep monitoring, advanced health management, and the world's first cycling virtual power feature. Fully compatible with both iOS and Android. Get yours now from just 169 Rand a month over 36 months or 4,999 Rand at selected retailers. T's and C's apply.
I think it's time for an adventure. We could visit the grandkids, check on a London apartment while we're there, or we could meet them in Dubai and look at properties along the way.
Why settle in one place when you can be a global citizen? If it's on your mind, it's on ours. Partner with a wealth banker who will connect your global banking, lending and investments on a single platform. See money differently. Nedbank Private Wealth. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
What do partners of the Gates Foundation do when facing the world's toughest challenges? They keep going. From discovering a plastic drape that helps detect excessive postpartum bleeding faster, to developing better bed nets to kill malaria-carrying mosquitoes, to researching an RSV vaccine that could save hundreds of thousands of children. For every problem, there are people who prove that progress is possible. The Gates Foundation, partners of human potential. Learn more at gatesfoundation.org/keep going.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud sponsor of the ABSA Africa Financial Markets Index 2025.
Well, more suggestions coming through about what you would take to another country as a gift, what you would take to basically show South Africa.
Karabo from Pimville. What I will take that is uniquely South African and what I will take abroad is a vuvuzela. Take a vuvuzela.
Of course.
Vuvuzela is uniquely South African. And I will take impepo. It's an incense.
Yes.
An African incense. Impepo. I will take it to China. It's uniquely South African. Thanks, John. Lovely show always.
Hello, Stephen. What about Mrs. Ball's chutney? This is Craig from Johannesburg, Northcliffe.
Thank you. I suppose we can add to that Omar Rusks or something. But yeah, great suggestions of Vuvuzela. How could I have not thought of that?
702 with Stephen Grootes.
Email him on stephen@702.co.za.
The World Gold Council saying that the demand for gold in the third quarter of the year was the highest on record and driven primarily by investment demand. Joe Cavatorni is the market strategist at the World Gold Council. Joe, good day. I do appreciate the time. Gold prices have been higher in the third quarter than ever before. We've talked before about the factors behind this. Is there a sense of FOMO as well? Is gold now at the point where people are buying it just because everybody else is buying it?
Well, Stephen, thanks for having me back. And I have to say that within the last 3 weeks, there's definitely been a lot of momentum pushing the gold price. The volatility levels are higher, and you could definitely give a little bit of that push well beyond 4,000 to a little bit of FOMO. But under all of it is a fundamental case for portfolio resilience and central bank functional shifting structurally their reserve requirements, and that's why gold is continuing to have very strong performance.
Gold is now at record highs, which means doing what the central banks are doing is suddenly a lot more expensive. And yet, I mean, are they still buying as much gold as they were despite these very high prices?
So it's a good question. The pace with which they've been buying has slowed a bit. They have healthy levels of consumption, but we're tracking at about 3/4 of what we've seen in previous years. So the third quarter has definitely seen a pickup. And the last 3 years, we've seen record flows of over 1,000 tons each year. And we're tracking at about 630 tons year to date. So we'll probably come in less than where we've seen it. But remember, this is a 16-year trend. And these levels are well above what we've seen over that 16 years. So they're still very active, and we see a lot more opportunity for the emerging market central banks to continue to bring gold into their reserve portfolio.
And a weakening dollar, I imagine, along with several other factors that are still present, and particularly geopolitics and everything else, it just means that desire by central banks is likely to be present for quite some time, almost no matter how expensive gold gets.
I think that's right. I think what you're finding are central banks looking at, like you've said, geopolitical issues, trade tensions, questions around the U.S.'s ambitions or desires to reset the global trade environment, the strength and or weakness that comes along with the dollar-based asset performance. But don't also forget large markets like China and large markets in the emerging market sense are looking also at their homegrown challenges around their own inflation concerns and their own currency concerns. So there's definitely global implications that they could use gold and diversify into it, but also homegrown concerns that they're managing it with as well.
What's happening in jewelry? Obviously, gold for jewelry has, been a human tray for thousands of years. Is this sort of gold price having an impact on jewelry trends at all?
And that's absolutely the right way to think about it and what the data is telling us. This gold market for jewelry is definitely an emerging market, consumer market, China and India being the largest. And these higher prices making jewelry expensive makes it harder for people to obtain. So we're definitely seeing a slowdown. It's still very meaningful in terms of the above ground stocks as well as the actual levels of consumption, but you're seeing levels of 20 to 25% declines in the average level of gold consumed in jewelry in places like China and India. Higher prices, harder to obtain, slower for people to accumulate them. They may even be shifting away from gold to silver or something at a little bit more of a price point that's affordable.
I do wonder about that. And gold bars and coins, you say investment in gold bars and coins in the quarter was up 17%. A lot of demand there.
So again, at the heart of what we're seeing is this idea globally. Asia, the US, Europe in third quarter, all looking at portfolio resilience. So bars and coins, physical demand, as well as exchange traded funds, really driving a lot of what the consumption's looking like over the quarter. Record flows in ETFs, record flows in these other markets as well. This is really an interesting time, and it's actually all at the heart of it, looking at portfolio resilience.
I obviously never going to ask you what do you think the gold price will be, but we have seen some predictions that seemed like fantasy 2 years ago. The only thing I think it's safe to say is that unless something changes dramatically in the world, we're likely to see gold at sort of 4,000 for quite some time to come, despite the fact that a year ago that seemed incredible.
You know, we were talking about it a year ago as something very aspirational, very exciting to see if it could get to that point. I think risk and uncertainty, the way the geopolitical landscape is playing out, it's going to keep demand well outpacing supply. Supply is only coming online at almost 3% per annum, and we're looking at double-digit growth in terms of the overall volumes of dollars being spent on gold, and 3, 5, 7% increases in the overall tonnage. So you're really looking at a pace that's going to keep that price supported. Again, we're going to see some volatility over the course of the next couple of months. We're coming into year end, some FOMO. People might be taking profits off the table, might be rebalancing, but the overall structural direction for gold remains very strong. Investment in central banks at the heart of that push.
Joe Cavatoni, thanks so much. Good to talk again. Market strategist at the World Gold Council, 8 minutes to 7.
Tip your way to glory in the Hollywood Bets Punters Challenge, the free-to-play horse racing game with daily cash giveaways and massive jackpot prizes. Pick all the winners on the race card and you could win 100,000 Rand. Bet 50 Rand or more on your selections using the Bet Slip feature and you could walk away with 1 million Rand. Visit punterschallenge.hollywoodbets.net today and tip your way to the top. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008.
You know those finfluencers, the kind of bros making bank in Bali, calling themselves forex gurus, promising you can make money while you sleep if you just buy their course. But then you end up losing sleep. Waking up for different market openings, checking charts, scanning the members-only group chat for signals, and you start wondering, why do they call it day trading when you're spending all night spending your money to make money, only to realize that they make their money selling courses on how to make money? Oh. When you can't trust overnight wins, trust 30 years of market-beating returns.
Coronation. Trust is earned. Coronation is an authorized FSP.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
More voice notes. What would you take to another country to show you're South African?
This is Selma of Roodepoort. Whenever my father-in-law came over from England, he always wanted to buy some local things that he liked. And one of that was biltong. His daughter loved that. And also, once when he came over here, he took a vuvuzela back home. And, of course, whenever it was Father's Day or his birthday or Christmas, he loved sending him these Amagurula liqueurs. Thanks for a lovely show. Bye.
Thanks very much indeed. Interesting what we choose. So far, it's meat, it's alcohol, and it's noise.
The Money Show, Tech Thursday.
Well, it does seem now that we're seeing the first signs that people will lose jobs because of artificial intelligence. Amazon cutting 14,000 jobs, saying they'll eventually cut 30,000. Our tech expert, Siphumelele Zondi, joins us now. Siphumelele, good evening. Is it definitely AI that's leading to this? I mean, can we say that for sure?
Hello, Stephen. And yes, it actually is definitely AI that's leading to this, because a lot of things that used to be done physically, manually, are now being automated. But also, there was a lot of experimentation as well, especially in the beginning stages of AI. And as companies discover that certain things are not working as well anymore, it's interesting that AI as well and some of that development might shut down, and that leads to losses of jobs in spaces where there were hires in the beginning stages.
I mean, obviously, this is very difficult, but we were told, and we've been told in the past, that actually AI will lead to new jobs. I mean, isn't that sort of one of the benefits that we're told will come, that when you have a big change like this, it leads to new industries and things?
Well, it does lead to new industries, but at the same time, it seems like the initial stages are leading to losses. And what might actually end up happening is that there will be losses now until people are retrained, because it's not clear the direction that AI is taking and will eventually take. So it's not clear what jobs are even needed in artificial intelligence. We do know that the issues of data centers that are all over the world, and someone does need to oversee the running of those data centers, especially when there are a few faults and the humans might need to sort of like get in there and fix a few things. But we are going through a stage right now where I think the industry is trying to figure out what's needed and realizing that what was needed may not be needed anymore. And it's actually across very many industries. I even think about an industry like, for example, deliveries. As we are buying a lot of stuff from home and as it's being delivered. But a lot of that is being automated now. You don't have people manning which orders are coming through anymore. You have a machine determining that, hey, Stephen clicked on a button somewhere. That button needs that, and it needs to communicate in that particular manner. So you don't really need a human there anymore.
There are some suggestions that, in fact, 150,000 tech jobs have been cut this year already. Do we know if there are other jobs for those people?
Well, that's the interesting part, because it's not clear where those jobs will be. Google has said that they will be cutting jobs, but what they're doing is to first is to allow people to figure out if there are spaces within the organization where they will fit in and where their skills can be pivoted to as well. Because as we're going through this period, it does feel like some people might actually not get employment as easily as they thought they would get employment in the past.
Is there, I mean, it seems to me that the first sort of people to go are the people in the tech jobs. And that's where AI is taking jobs now, not so much in other sectors yet.
It's across the place, because when you think about it, for example, if you're in HR and you find that your company had multiple people doing an HR job, and you find that there are now automated systems that can do what people could do in the past. So it's not necessarily a core technology, but it's because of technology, new AI technologies being introduced. That people will then start be losing jobs. So it's not necessarily core tech jobs, but it's jobs that are being lost because of technology. And yes, the technology industry is the first to have these big layoffs.
It wasn't very long ago that we all got very excited that at some government schools you could study coding. And, you know, now it would seem that whole push to get people into the tech sector may have been a waste of time.
Well, that's interesting as well, because even coding itself, and I would think that South Africa probably got into it quite late, when you'd find that a lot of those skills 20 years ago were being outsourced from elsewhere in the world. I think of India, for example, and we started to have that conversation a bit too late, because what's happening now, especially with coding, is that there is automation moving into that space as well. So yes, it was a conversation that happened, but is it a conversation that needs to continue? Coders will still be needed, but will they be needed in the high volumes that we thought they'd be needed in, let's say, 4 years ago? In all likeliness, not. And so we might not necessarily need those big volumes and to need to train people at a bigger scale as South Africa was planning 3 years ago, for example.
Siphumelele Zondi, thanks very much indeed. Really do appreciate it, our tech expert. Interesting to see how this plays out. Impossible to predict what happens next. We have seen when big things like this happen. Think of the inventing of printing, for example. At first, people who would hand copy books lost their jobs. But look at what happened to the economy after that. You kind of hope that maybe these people losing their jobs, as difficult as that is for them, may be the start of something actually going the other way. Very hard to know. Good evening, you with The Money Show. It's 7 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Zingisa Chirwa. The DA in Johannesburg has criticized the ANC for what it says is politicizing the appointment of a city manager. Floyd Brink was reappointed to the position today, despite controversy surrounding his previous tenure. His appointment had initially been scheduled for last week, but was delayed due to internal divisions within the ANC. Brink was removed from the position in December last year after the Gauteng High Court ruled that his appointment was irregular. Alvaro Mushwana has more.
The ANC had been split over who to back for the position of Johannesburg city manager. One faction supported Floyd Brink's reappointment, while another favoured former Johannesburg Property Company CEO Helen Boetes. Today, the party finally found common ground and backed Brink for reappointment. DA caucus leader Belinda Kaiser Echuzonjoku says it was unfortunate that the appointment of a city manager became so highly politicised.
We are not going to get involved in the ANC internal factional battle because we know that this is about the ANC's internal factional battle.
The DA abstained from the vote. Alfa Ramshwana, Eyewitness News.
The National Prosecuting Authority has been instructed to investigate the disappearance of a boy who allegedly witnessed Chief Albert Luthuli being assaulted by white men on the day of his death. Today, the KwaZulu-Natal High Court ruled the former ANC president was beaten to death by apartheid police and employees from the South African Railway Company. It also set aside what it called the highly flawed 1967 inquest report, which said Luthuli died as a result of being hit by a train. Thabiso Koba reports.
On the 21st of July 1967 in Groudville, KZN, a young Mpemu Mnyandu was given a letter by his father to deliver to Chief Albert Luthuli. When Mnyandu reached the Luthuli family home, he was told the chief had left and went to the fields to check on his crop. When the boy reached the field, he saw a group of white men hitting Luthuli repeatedly on his head with a spade. The men spotted him, however Mnyandu, who was traveling with a bike, managed to get away. Judge Nompumelelo Hadebe says a few days later, Mnyandu was visited by police at his home.
They took him away under the pretext that they were going to take a witness statement from him. To this day, the said Mpemu Mnyandu has never returned home.
However, before Mnyandu was taken away, he had recounted what he saw to his family, and 58 years later, Bafi Mdletshe recounted his uncle's story in court during the reopened inquest. Thabiso Koba, Eyewitness News, Pietermaritzburg.
In the Western Cape, Goodwood Prison is under scrutiny following the death of an inmate and the attempted suicide of an official. This follows an unannounced visit by Parliament's Correctional Services Committee chairperson, Khomotso Marobuleng, yesterday. Another Cape Town prison, Polesmore, is also facing an investigation after 2 inmates were killed during a stabbing attack on warders, 2 of whom were wounded on Wednesday morning. Lauren Isaacs has more on yesterday's surprise inspection.
Parliament's Correctional Services Committee chairperson Khomotso Ramolobeng has paid particular attention to Goodwood Prison's hospital section, the firearms and ammunitions storeroom, and a cell occupied by an inmate who recently died of natural causes. Interviewing inmates about the incident, it's emerged 3 others also fell ill with stomach-related conditions since that fatality, while the outcome of an autopsy is still outstanding. The parliamentarian has also followed up on information that an official who had attempted suicide allegedly signed out a firearm at the facility. However, examining the register, she's found discrepancies with the sign-out signature, corroborating information received by the committee that the firearm was not lawfully signed out by the official. Ramolobeng says the committee will need to engage the Correctional Services Department on these discrepancies as they do not paint a good picture. Lauren Isaacs, Eyewitness News.
And US President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping have agreed to calm the trade war between China and the United States. The trade war roiled global markets, with Washington cutting some tariffs and Beijing committing to keep supplies of critical rare earths flowing. According to the US leader, the talks yielded an extendable one-year deal on China's supply of crucial rare earths. The materials are essential for sophisticated electronic components across a range of industries.
All of the rare earth has been settled. And that's for the world. I mean, worldwide. China is that whole situation. That roadblock is gone now. There's no roadblock at all on rare earth.
In your financials, gold is trading at $4,000.77 an ounce. The rand is 17.28 to the dollar, 22.75 to the pound, and 20 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $64.99 a barrel.
In Irene, traffic remains heavily backed up. This is on Main Road approaching Nelmapius Drive, while in the mother city, there's still slow-moving traffic. M3 southbound approaching Clipper Road, and there's also bumper-to-bumper traffic. M5 southbound, this is heading towards Pinelands.
A partly cloudy Friday is in store for Gauteng tomorrow, with afternoon thundershowers expected. Johannesburg drops to overnight lows of around 13 degrees, peaking at 22. Pretoria and Vereeniging drop to 15 and peak at 24. Cape Town is partly cloudy, becoming cloudy with a gentle west-northwesterly breeze at a low of 16 and a high of 22. The top story on EWN this hour: the DA in Johannesburg has criticized the ANC for what it says is politicizing the appointment of a city manager.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud sponsor of the ABSA Africa Financial Markets Index 2025.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
6 minutes after 7, good evening. Glad you're with us for the second hour. Plenty to come. We will be talking about jewelry. You heard the conversation earlier with the World Gold Council, a suggestion that, in fact, because the price of gold is so high, people are looking for other things, moving away from gold when it comes to jewelry. And you can just see how this is going to go. For some people, the mark that we're really rich, I'm really worth it, he'll do this for me, well, then you're going to spend the money on gold. For others, it'll be, no, I'm just going to find something else. I'm going to use silver, maybe even some platinum, who knows, maybe some white gold, and sort of use that instead for jewelry. But I think we are going to see a subtle change. I mean, the price of gold is just so high. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Also, we'll speak to the CEO of the company Resolute Education, Radresh Pusunguli. The company that they've created really is amazing. It's essentially about helping people study using computers to do that, and essentially doing it through play. It's a very clever system. They actually won a big award not very long ago, in fact, at the Future Trust Summit last year. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then don't forget, the investment school tonight, global diversification and today's markets. Vincent Anthony Raja will be in. You know the number, 011 8830702 02144605667, and voice notes, of course, as well on 072 702 1702.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
Well, still a couple of suggestions coming through about what you would take if you were going to another country. And Stephen saying, salute. Thank you, Stephen. A peppermint crisp in Northern Europe. They were surprised when I brought that out. Stephen says he's from Wellington. I'm presuming Wellington, South Africa, in the Western Cape more than anyone else. Tom Sankar says, isn't it ironic that computer scientists that studied AI are the ones losing jobs? There is an irony there. It does happen sometimes when you see revolutionary change. The people in the sector are the ones that lose it first. I did think that was interesting. I don't know if you saw this today. SARS, this was in Fin24. They've been involved in this long-running battle with a person called Roy Malega, over 188 million rand. And essentially the claim that they've made is that Malaya imported 30 tons of tobacco, and then the tobacco disappeared. You know where it's gone. I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me. It must have. I can't think of anywhere else. It must have gone to the illicit industry. And so SARS basically have been chasing him for the money. and it seems that they eventually got it. Took a long time to get the judgment, by the way, not sure why. But SARS, I just get a sense you hear more and more about SARS at the moment, and I don't think that's by accident. I think that we're going to hear a lot more around enforcement. They want to sort of show that they're able to get more money in. We saw yesterday they beat the estimate for the fiscal 6-month period by 18 billion rand. I'll be interested in your experiences of SARS, though, if you're bringing things into the country, if you're working in the business space, what your experience of SARS has been there. Voice notes, please, on 072 702 1702, 10 after 7.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
Spending It is brought to you by the Glenlivet. Live Original. True originals don't drink and drive. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18. Drink responsibly. An interesting collection of jewelry on sale recently. And Status & Co. holding a fine jewelry sale. It includes our own Browns brand, along with companies like Cartier and Tiffany & Co. And we have rarely seen when companies like Strauss do this and they put together a big exhibition, you really start to see trends in jewelry. Debbie Hathaway is a watches and jewelry writer. Debbie, good evening. To put together a sale like this, I imagine it's actually quite difficult. You need the right mixture of things. You need things that are attractive, and it must be quite revealing around what the trends are.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I spoke to Kim Goller about this. She's the jewelry specialist at Strauss & Co. And they focus on fine jewelry when they're putting their auctions together. So they might be handmade by goldsmiths in the 1970s, or they could be manufactured in Italy 5 years ago. So they theme the auctions according to whatever they decide at the time, and they include a diverse range of luxury jewels. So if a Van Cleef & Arpels or a Cartier piece are a good fit, they'll include those. But equally, if a piece from South Africa's Browns or Elegant Jewelers works well with the theme, then they'll also consign those for the sale.
Can you, when you're designing jewelry, is there anything distinctive about, South African or Italian jewelry? I'm not a visual person, so I can't really imagine how someone would do that, and I sort of doubt that that's the case.
Well, the Italians would dispute that. Made in Italy is a huge brand, and the Italian leaders in the industry are particularly passionate about heritage and provenance, and their goldsmithing is, arguably top in the world. So when it comes to Italian jewelry, you'd certainly be looking for handmade. Handmade is a huge plus. But when it comes to local, Browns is actually expanding. Kim was telling me that they're looking at Australia, but they're already beyond the borders in Dubai and London. So it's important for Strauss to promote beautiful South African jewelry creations, especially given their large international client base and their status as the leading auction house in Africa.
How do you make a name in this business? I mean, you obviously need to produce something that is distinctive. You need to produce something of a very high quality. You need to pay attention to many factors. And I imagine if you sort of look at the names, most of these houses, if I can call them that, have been going for a long time.
Absolutely. I saw something earlier today on social media where somebody was bemoaning the fact that there's, fashion jewelry has almost devalued the market in the sense that cheaper items have been sold, sort of gold-plated or flaking jewelry that just sort of gives the industry a bad name. So people, particularly collectors, are looking for signed pieces from the big brands, like the ones that I mentioned earlier, Cartier, Bulgari, Van Cleef, Piaget, those kinds, because they know that there's going to be potentially rarity, especially with the bespoke pieces. Craftsmanship is guaranteed. Heritage is there. Browns has been going for a long time. So it's certainly not easy. I think it takes grit, it takes determination. Obviously, your design factors have got to be there. And then traceability is a big thing now. So people are looking, especially the younger collectors, they want to know exactly where the gold and the gems have come from. They want to know that it's been responsibly mined, and brands who are doing the right thing in terms of sustainable sourcing are getting more support.
If you're Strauss and you're putting together a collection like this, I presume there's some big names you absolutely have to have, and you have to get the mix quite right. You have to include enough of the big names for people to be interested.
Yes, I suppose you could argue for that. Kim makes a good point in that jewelry is really no different from art. So, what appeals to one buyer might be less desirable than another. And if you look at the recent sale that closed on Monday night, incidentally, there were 128 lots offered, and they sold almost 80% for over 7 million rand. And those weren't all brand names. A diamond tennis necklace by Brown sold for 50,000 rand over its maximum estimate for 350,000. The pieces that they had by Fapé, which is one of the big Italian names, as well as Bulgari and Cartier, all sold within their estimate range. But one of the top lots was a 5.5 carat diamond solitaire, estimated between 300 and 400,000 rand, and that sold for 570,000. So it doesn't always have to be a big name. Discerning collectors, people know what they're looking for. They know, and of course, auction houses like Strauss do their homework and they make sure that everything is verified and authentic. So pieces that are not necessarily signed can fetch high prices like that.
And Debbie, a very high gold price at the moment. We spoke earlier to the World Gold Council. They suggested that globally people were moving away from working in gold, that basically the jewelry trend was changing simply because of the price. Are we seeing that here?
I can't comment on the South African market, but I write a lot about watches as well, and the stainless steel watches are the biggest segment, and I suppose if brands are wanting to encourage people to start buying, they might go for lower value, but people who really want to invest in jewelry want to wear their pieces. So 9 times out of 10, they're going to go for gold, even if they start at a 14 carat. You can start from there, but 18 carat is ideally where you want to be.
Debbie Hathaway, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate the insights. The watches and jewelry writer on The Money Show. You pour a glass of the Glenlivet and time slows. A hint of spice, fruit and oak warmth. Now imagine that same spirit of craftsmanship with the elegance of the Mercedes-Benz AMG. When you buy Glenlivet 12 to 25-year-old, you could win a brand new Mercedes-Benz AMG. Visit theglenlivet.com or any participating store for a chance to win. Made to follow no one. The Glenlivet. Live original. True originals don't drink and drive. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18. Drink responsibly. T's and C's apply.
That thrives, a hospital that serves, and energy that powers millions of dreams. It's a story that only gets better with a partner that has the expertise and solutions to make it a reality. At ABSA CIB, we are invested in your story, and we invite you to write it with us, because your story matters. ABSA. An authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Huawei Watch GT6 Series, 2025's must-have smartwatch, introducing the king of power. Up to 21 days of unstoppable battery life in a sleek titanium and ceramic design that's as strong as it's stylish. The Trackmaster with 24/7 heart rate tracking, sleep monitoring, advanced health management, and the world's first cycling virtual power feature. Fully compatible with both iOS and Android. Get yours now from just 169 Rand a month over 36 months or 4,999 Rand at selected retailers. T's and C's apply.
Imagine if you could save time like you save money. A second here, a minute there. Type a little faster, walk a little faster. Or you could stop scrolling on the internet. Just think of all the hours you'll save. Now what if you could take all that time and invest it? Watch it grow. Until eventually, one day, you'd have so much time that you wouldn't know what to do with it all. But unfortunately, time doesn't work like that. It can't be stored or banked. And unlike money, you can't make it back. That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do whatever you want to do, even if it is scrolling on the internet. Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
Beyond every boardroom is a story waiting to be written. A story of a business and its potential, of a community that thrives, a hospital that serves, and energy that powers millions of dreams. It's a story that only gets better with a partner that has the expertise and solutions to make it a reality. At ABSA CIB, we are invested in your story, and we invite you to write it with us, because your story matters. ABSA, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
You pour a glass of the Glenlivet and time slows. A hint of spice, fruit and oak warmth. Now, imagine that same spirit of craftsmanship with the elegance of the Mercedes-Benz AMG. When you buy Glenlivet 12 to 25-year-old, you could win a brand new Mercedes-Benz AMG. Visit theglenlivet.com or any participating store for a chance to win. Made to follow no one. The Glenlivet Live Original. True originals don't drink and drive. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18. Drink responsibly. T's and C's apply.
The Money Show. Small Business Focus.
Small Business Focus is brought to you by Capitec. Start up or scale up with Capitec, the business bank for everyone. Well, one of the smallish firms, I say ish because I suspect they won't be that way for long, and that's made a big impact in the last couple of years is called Resolute Education. They've been helping coding, robotics, stuff that I don't always understand, to basically help bridge that gap between school and universities. And in fact, last year at the Future Trust Summit, they won $1 million for their business. Rajesh Pusangili is the CEO at Resolute Education. Rajesh, good evening. Thanks so much for coming in.
Good evening, Stephen. Excited to be here.
So your company was first just you and one other person, a real person, not an AI person. You obviously had a background in IT. What made you think of this idea?
Yeah, so I actually dropped IT in grade 10, took history, because I was like,
Sensible.
which is what I thought. I ended up in electronic engineering, and I think I realized how much I hated that field until I got to final year, and I got to build this really cool project, and I got it to work. But during my university years, I fell in love with education. I tutored a lot of kids, and then I thought I'm going to go change the world by becoming a teacher at a public school. So I went to go become a teacher, and that's where I really realized how tough our education system is to change. And being a tutor is the one side of it. So teaching maths and traditional subjects like science is always interesting, but technology is moving so fast. And I started asking myself the question is, how are we going to bring these new age subjects into schools where kids are actually starting to learn these concepts? And so the idea of coding and robotics came through. So I partnered up with my co-founder, Gareth, who studied electronic engineering with me. And we started this company in under 2019, 2020, and it's been going well.
How would you describe the service that you actually provide? I mean, what you're doing is you're helping people learn. I have teenage children, and there's sometimes you can come across something, it was the same for me, and you just think, this is not that hard, but I just can't learn it.
Yeah, I think the most critical skill, like you said with your teenagers, you want them to learn, but I think I would phrase it as we want the ability to give the kids the ability to think. I think that's kind of our slogan, is even in the day of AI where everything's going to be automated, the true thing that we can really pass our learners on is how do we get them the ability to think, right? So we came up with that slogan, and think really does stand for like tinker, hacking, being inquisitive, being able to network, and being a lifelong learner, which is knowledge. And so these subjects like coding and robotics really helps kids how to problem solve, because it doesn't matter how far we go civilization and how technologically advanced we are, that ability to think and problem solve is pretty evergreen, and that's what we want to instill in our kids.
I remember someone describing it once as what you do when you get a new cell phone. You know, the first thing you do is you play with it. You try and change the screen, and you do this. I mean, and that is something that's innate. That's what we all do. I mean, that's the basis of toys. That's the basis of a human being. Is actually, I've got a mug in front of me, and I can unscrew it. Done that now. Now I'm going to spill water. You play with it.
Yeah, that's it. That's the fun part of the subject. So when you look at some of the traditional subjects in schools, it's very theoretical. Kids just are passive learning elements in there, and they listen to the concepts, and that's all that it is, right? And coding and robotics is part of this new wave of technology-driven subjects, which are more active learning methodologies, like they're part of the STEM movement. And the idea really is to play. So it's to build something cool and to program it, which is to give it instructions, and to be inquisitive around it and make it come to life. And so what that does is it actually fires these neurons in your mind, which is different to a passive learning method, and you get to build something. And so it's an active learning method, and it really develops your cognitive ability, and that's what's exciting about it. And it's fun with our kids and even some of the adults. I remember my dad came to me and he's like, can you teach me how to do this? I want to do it again, and it's so it's fun, and that fun element really gets kids excited.
You have a model, I think it's called Business in a Box.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, so for many years, we've been focusing very much on assisting schools and implementing these subjects, trying to partner with government, trying to bring this into the schools as an in-curriculum subject. And what got me thinking is the big problem that we have in Africa, and specifically in South Africa, is unemployment. And so entrepreneurship is something very exciting for me, being a founder and being an entrepreneur myself. So we thought that there's so many learners that leave our programs, and we kind of want to take the journey further with them. And we really believe entrepreneurship is the true way of actually creating businesses. So we were thinking of Business in a Box as more a market innovating concept. So how do we create a market with it? So the idea really is that anyone, like a teacher, a community caregiver, or a entrepreneur, can really come to us. We have this really new toolkit that we designed. It has some robots in it, a laptop, curriculum, a loaded LMS. We train them, and the idea is that they take this toolbox back to their schools, their communities, and they set up these innovation hubs or centers and really transform the community around them, and really start going to the people that are not part of the schooling system, so the non-consumers, and get them to become participants in this movement. And the whole idea is, how do we create that ecosystem where learning is becoming exciting and innovation is becoming exciting, and that the people that never had this opportunity in school and the students that are not part of the traditional system can become participants in this space.
You started in 2019. Something happened in 2020. I forget what it was now. How did demand change over time? I mean, were there some people who you just knew immediately they're going to tell everybody, and there were some people who just didn't get it?
Yeah, so I told my co-founder, who's insanely risk averse, he's the opposite to me, and I told him, bro, I'm telling you, this was in 2019, right? If I go pitch to 100 schools, we will sign 20 schools and we'll be in business. Like, just trust me.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of plan. So we got a bit of investment, and 2020 Feb, we started off. Then COVID launched in
March.
in March. And it was an exciting 8-9 months in a sense that we were stuck at home. We couldn't go to market. And what was insanely scary is that schools were actually cutting budgets. No sports was allowed, no extracurricular was allowed. And so we thought this is probably the worst time to launch it. But what we did was we anyway created the product, focused on building it out. We had the entire 6 months of focus of where we could build the product. And I can't tell you how, but we did end up signing 20 schools at the end of the year, even during teacher retrenchments and not having these extracurricular clubs. And from there, we haven't looked back. 20 became 60, became 120, and currently we are about in 450 schools in the country.
Sure. So interesting, Rajesh. Thanks very much indeed. It's a great story. Really appreciate the fact that you were actually able to come in. Rajesh Pusangeli is the CEO at Resolute Education.
That's the sound of your business growing. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, turn your passion into profit with Capitec Business Banking. Save up to 50% on fees. Get fast credit approvals, personalized support, and Forex for your business. Open your business banking account on our app. Bank on better with Capitec, the business bank for everyone. Capitec is an authorized FSP 46669. T's and C's apply.
Coming up,
The Aubrey Masango Show
on 702
and Cape Talk.
Someone my age. Aubrey, good evening. What's coming up tonight?
Yeah, you feel like an ancient artifact.
Coding. I mean, what? I was too scared to ask. Can old people learn it too?
It's a beautiful world we live in. Dr. Samgen Ngobo, medical doctor, author, and mental health advocate, joins me in the first hour as we discuss psychological matters. We're talking about mental wellness advocacy and the language thereof. How do we speak about it? Because it's got so many pitfalls, I suppose, that we need to be aware of. How do we speak about mental wellness mental illness. Second hour of the show, very, very important. Premier of Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, joins me in studio. We talk about the scathing report by the public protector with regards
Which he
to
ducked.
Panyaz.
He closed them down just before the report was released. Come on,
definitely
Panyaza.
a question I'm going to be asking in that hour. And then in the third hour of the show, I speak to Mbuso Khoza, storyteller, singer, producer, and actor in our Gwantu feature. And we are going to be looking at the evolution of African music and how it speaks to its times. And then, of course, the final hour is an open line. That's the show tonight.
Aubrey, thanks very much indeed. Half an hour from now, don't forget Panyaza Lesufi. I think that's going to be very, very interesting, the Gauteng premiere. You're at the Money Show, just gone 7:30. Investment School is next. First, though, Zingisa, good evening. The Madlanga Commission and Kat Matlala.
Well, Stephen, it seems the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry has heard how tender tycoon Vusimuzi Kat Matlala visited the home of former National Police Commissioner Re-industrialising SA hours before his arrest in May. This has been revealed by Witness C, a detective attached to the Gauteng counterintelligence operations. The witness was testifying partially in camera before the inquiry. Pierre was appointed National Police Commissioner in 2012. She was suspended in 2015 and in 2017 was officially removed following several allegations of misconduct, perjury, and defeating the ends of justice.
He said he was there at the former Commissioner, Mr. Ria Pierre's premises. When he left that premises, his motorcade was driving at a very high speed. And unfortunate for him, he hit a pothole. Then his Mercedes-Benz came to a standstill on the side of the road.
Water expert Jeff Baloyi says viable solutions to tackle the challenge of water loss in the city of Johannesburg have been identified. Baloyi was speaking at Rand Water's WaterWise outreach program in Soweto today, where the utility and its partners were informing residents about the benefits of water conservation. He says implementing hydraulic models can help detect and pinpoint the exact locations of water leaks, which will help the metro save water. He adds this is just one method the metro can use to address the challenge of water loss.
So we look on the what we can call hydraulic modeling, where we look in terms of the non-revenue water. So we are busy doing a lot of piloting around that space and looking in terms of the detection of these leaks and everything, so that we have an advanced system which we can report into.
Baloyi says they are working with Joburg Water to address the ongoing challenges in the province.
Joburg Water has been looking also in terms of the reclamation of water, so which is very important, because that meaning that now you are creating another alternative source of water, which, as me and you will speak now, it does not exist. So should Joburg Water crack that, meaning it also add into the amount of water which they are receiving within coming from the rainwater.
In the Western Cape, Khayelitsha residents say they are determined to change the idea of Cape Town as a tale of two cities. Close to 1,000 Khayelitsha residents, supported by regional ANC members, marched to the Cape Town Civic Centre today. They handed over a memorandum of demands which include access to running water, electricity supply and road infrastructure. ANC chairperson in the Dula Omar region, Ditini Chido, says multiple wards in Khayelitsha have been without these services since the late 80s.
We are very, very much not happy about this, because it is a sign of a mayor who has no to face the community he claims to be leading. The city of Cape Town is an executive system of municipality. Now, when residents rises up in the number that they are in, regardless of how low do you think of them, it's only courteous and politically responsible for anybody to receive them yourself.
And assessments are underway to determine the extent of damage left by Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica, Haiti and Cuba. The storm left at least 32 people dead across the region. Although downgraded from a Category 5 to a Category 1 storm, Melissa gathered speed as it swept through the Bahamas today. The storm is expected to make landfall in Bermuda later. It's considered to be the strongest storm to strike the Caribbean island in modern history. It's stronger than Hurricane Katrina, which devastated New Orleans in 2005, killing over 1,390 people. And in your weather, a partly cloudy Friday is in store for Gauteng tomorrow with afternoon thundershowers expected. Lows of between 13 and 15 degrees and highs of between 22 and 24. Cape Town will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy at a low of 16 and a high of 22. The top story on EWN. The Madlanga Commission of Inquiry has heard how tender tycoon Vusumuzi Matlala visited the home of former National Police Commissioner Re-industrialising SA hours before his arrest in May.
As the world's leaders meet for the G20 summit in Johannesburg, the eyes of the world will be upon us. Not just to South Africa, but Africa. It's the very first time that this summit has been held on our continent. What the world will see is a country building infrastructure that improves the lives of its people and lives up to the summit's themes of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. SANRAL's investment and projects ensure that we undertake this journey together with our neighbors. The N4 Maputo Corridor project stimulates trade to Maputo in Mozambique. The upgrade extends along the N4 to the Trans-Kalahari Corridor, growing trade for Botswana. The N7 from the Cape to Namibia is growing cross-border commerce, and the N1 project facilitates trade with Zimbabwe. The world will see an Africa that's building a better continent through roads. SANRAL, an agency of the Department of Transport.
Standard Bank and 702 have joined forces to bring you China Unlocked.
So China is very dynamic and it's a massive market, as you can imagine. There's about 1.4 billion people, 23 provinces that you would be navigating as an exporter. So the Africa-China trade solutions, or what we refer to as the ACT solutions, are designed to simplify and accelerate trade between Africa and China. It's a combination of financial solutions, trade facilitation, market access support, all under one umbrella.
Don't miss China Unlocked on 702 Drive with John Perlman. Tuesdays on 702. Brought to you by Standard Bank Business and Commercial, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The Money Show.
Investment School.
24 minutes now to 7 the time. Time for Investment School tonight. As always, you can put your questions too on 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and voice notes on 072 702 1702. When you look at what's happening around the world, if you look at a record gold price and record prices, record indices in the US, the market's breaking records there, largely because of AI. Because we're also seeing different growth patterns in different places, we thought that it might be an important moment to have a conversation about why global diversification matters, particularly in today's market. Vincent Anthony Raja is the CEO and co-founder at Differential Capital. I've known him for a long time. He's happy to take your questions on 072 702 1702. Vincent, good evening. Thanks for coming in.
Good evening, Stephen, and thanks for having me.
I suppose the first question that you would have to look at is why you would need to diversify now would be about what's happening in the world. And we're seeing different things happen in different places. And even to the point of interest rate differentials between, say, the US and Europe.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, very important trends to take note of. I think interest rates are one very important driver. And let's just talk about it in the context of central banks and governments, potentially meddling into the affairs of the central banks themselves, potentially undermining the strength of their currencies, and so that's a major risk. So if you look at what the US is potentially going to do is push down rates further. That's probably not the best thing for the inflation. So all those kind of risks should be considered. But if you take also a step back and think about the bigger macro trends in the US, that economy is being largely driven, at least the stock market anyway, largely driven by the AI theme, right? And whether it works or not, whether there's going to be a real productivity shift is one major theme which you need to consider. Europe has a very different set of problems. You've got an aging population, horrible fiscal situations. In simple terms, those governments have way too much debt and are not collecting enough revenues potentially. So you've got that, and you've got a destruction of their manufacturing base. So if one only has to look around South Africa. Look at the cars that you see parked next to you. Probably 10 years ago, a good chance it was a German car. Now I'm probably quite confident that 1 in 3 is a Chinese car, at least the new ones anyway. So, and that's on that side. On the other side, you've got China, who's starting to take over the world's manufacturing chain, more than just, let's call it, simple goods, cars, far more advanced goods. And then on the other side, you've got the Southeast Asian economies, which are, there's interesting trends. And finally, back home in Africa, there's also material, trends around Africa, specifically around the commodity demand that the rest of the world seems to want. So those are the important and quite divergent, trends that one needs to consider. And I think we're probably going to go into a world where, let's call it, returns are also going to be quite divergent because of these themes that are not exactly correlated with each other,
So what that means then is that you need to have a little piece of the right action in the right place. And that's become more important than just throw your money into the US stock market.
Yeah. Unless you're very certain, I'm not, unless you're very certain that, investment A, or say now you have a view on Europe or you have a view on the US markets, unless you're very certain, and you might have an information advantage I certainly don't have, I would say it's important to diversify.
There's been a time when, for a very long period, markets were kind of moving, not quite in lockstep, but certainly together. We talk about the sort of end of the Cold War kind of boom. The whole world almost seemed to be growing. That seems to have changed. Now, that must have quite a lot of quite serious implications for how you sort of manage your portfolio now, because now you can't just take a sort of broad approach and it'll all go up.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think the world where you could just pick some passive strategy, where everything relied on one really major trend around the world, which was like, we went through 30 years where interest rates around the world were getting lower and lower and lower and lower. And we went into the GFC, and then afterwards, all economies around the world, central banks also rallied together and pumped liquidity into the system together. And I think things really changed around the time, Trump's first time in power, where you could start to see real geopolitical tension pushing against, let's call it, the world coming together. And countries are really starting to diverge in terms of their own strategies, what they're trying to do, and what they think is best for their own populations. And I think that major change should really be considered carefully by investors. So yeah, you're spot on, Steve.
So you really do need to sort of think a little bit more carefully. So then you've got emerging markets. And we were talking about it earlier in the show, earlier this week, about sort of the phrase, we were talking about the phrase, not making the comment, Africa is the continent of the future, partly because it's the one place where populations are growing. But there are other places too. India and Indonesia, for example. These are places that you just cannot ignore in a way that maybe you could a few years ago.
Definitely. If I was to start with India, I think they've been delivering 6% GDP growth for the last 25 years. Their stock market is doing really well because over the last 6 or 7 years, they've started to liberalize their economy, reduce regulation somewhat, and that's really spurring their economy on. And you're starting to see the rise of the Indian consumer, the developing middle class. And the important point that you mentioned there, Steve, is about, a young population, a young labor force, which they have, which is very different to China and Europe for certain. So that is an economy that you can't ignore. And it's not something that you can easily invest in either, which probably makes it, interesting for South Africans to consider. Similarly, if one thinks about other Southeast Asian economies like Indonesia, like Malaysia, the Philippines, I think, there's economies like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka itself, which are also interesting to keep an eye on. And then you've got, Africa, which I think now, for the next few decades, more than ever, what drives Africa, bottom line, are two things: the commodity abundance, as well as youthful populations, a strong labor force. And I think that's going to be, ingredients to success in pockets around Africa, particularly countries that kind of get their policies right. And there are quite a few out there. If I am quite encouraged by, if one looks at the listing of Optasia this week, and you just read a bit about what's happening there in various countries, that's an awesome investment story. At least, its prospects are a different thing. I don't know, but certainly what they've managed to do is a clear example of how one can harness, these populations which are starting to come out of poverty, emerging maybe just below middle class. But that trend, I think, will continue. And again, you've got a large continent that one simply can't ignore like you did for the last 20 or so years.
And many of these countries will have their own ShopRites and Capitex, and especially their Capitex. If you buy into their Capitex at the right moment, it'll deliver for you over the longer term.
Yeah, definitely. I think, if you look at South America, you have the story of Nubank, which, is again, let's call it a Capitec in South America, Brazil. So I think these emerging economies, and I have to exclude China out of that because I think they're more developed now. I think these emerging economies, let's call it the new set of emerging markets, have really, really interesting investment themes. And again, I think it's very interesting. It's worth a look. And that's geographical, Let's not forget there's asset classes, commodities. So there's this whole, the raft of things that one needs to consider because, again, I think that divergent theme applies equally across asset classes as it does, geographic regions. Yeah.
There's also, of course, issues around currency diversification. So, and I mean, some of the reliable comments that you could make, some of the sort of, foundational points are being swept away. And particularly one of those is dollar strength, that you would put your money into the dollar and that everything would be rated against the dollar. And that seems to now be changing. You would probably, I never thought I'd have an American ask me where they should put their money, but it's actually happened. And so what you're seeing is you need to sort of look at other currencies quite carefully.
Yep. And other currencies, and importantly, start really thinking about what drives the currency. At the heart of it is the real productivity of the economies that it represents. So if one thinks about like the yuan, the reality is as they produce more and more things for the world to buy, chances are you're going to have to settle in their currency. Dealing in dollars just is going to make less and less sense, just logically. Why would you, if it gets to a point, let's just extrapolate. If we bought all of our cars from China, why would they eventually want to have, rands to dollars to yuan? Probably not, And I think you're going to move to a world where, again, just that trend of China and also the weakening manufacturing base of Europe also means that, the euro itself probably also wanes a little bit as a currency in which you want to deal. So I just think you're going to have a more diverse currency basket underpinning productivity. And, the earlier comment that you started with, Steve, about interest rates around the world, because that also impacts currencies. And if you go into a world where, due to political interference or otherwise, you have to lower interest rates, demand for those currencies also drops. So those are things that we're also going to have to factor in. And again, diversification across geography, across currencies is something you have to think about a lot carefully. Yeah.
Does it also make investing more complicated? The fact that you suddenly can't really predict currencies and can't necessarily be sure what your correct currency allocation should be. Again, it comes back to 5 years ago. Oh, the dollar's going to weaken. I think people would have laughed at me.
Yeah, I think we are moving into a world where, again, because we're at this change in, regime change, it makes it difficult until we figure out what the new trends are going to be, and then it becomes a little bit easier afterwards. But I think we're at a major inflection point as far as world macroeconomics is concerned, and it makes it tricky, but also very interesting. I find, it's not the same story about the dollar is a one-way trade, as it has been, for a long time. It's not that probability is zero, by the way. One shouldn't write off the US. If they pull off what their bet on AI is going to be. You know, that point that I made about productivity being a key underpin of a currency. You know, that could weigh in the dollar's favor too. But again, I think there's a lot more balance to that equation than there was, you know, over the last 20 years, particularly from a South African perspective, because we've been so used to, you know, the rand being punished one way, you know. And yes, we still have, you know, question marks around our own fiscal discipline. So in simple terms, that's just the government's balancing of the books. But again, I mentioned the point about commodities. And if you look at South Africa's history, a commodity cycle, there's nothing like a commodity cycle to give the rand a couple of years, maybe more, of at least parity or strength against the dollar. So that's something you need to watch.
We're speaking to Vincent Anthony Raja on Investment School tonight, the CEO and co-founder of Differential Capital. We talk about global diversification, why it matters in today's markets. Your questions for him, 011 883 0702, 021 446 0567, and voice notes, of course, on 072 702 1702. It's 11 minutes to 8.
Summer is about rewarding yourself with oceanic views, sizzling braais, and so much more. Earn your share of 120 million rand in real cashback, depending on your rewards tier, when you pay with your Absa Visa card. Plus, enter the Absa Swiper competition and stand a chance to win one of 10 cars. This summer could be the best you've had in years. Your story matters. Absa, T's and C's apply. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. 702 and the Dis-Chem Foundation are shining the spotlight on the health matters you want to know more about. Here's what we explored this month.
Head of Outreach at Holy Rosary School, Yvette Bibis. It's about the importance of sight and access through reading glasses for those who need them most.
We came across Lens of Hope in Cape Town. They collect old frames, refurbish them, and give them to people who can't afford to buy their own. Within 2 weeks of us starting, it just went countrywide. Today, what we've got on our premises are 4,200 pairs of glasses.
Well, 4-2 is an extraordinary achievement. Good luck with the work.
In Conversation on Afternoon Drive with John Perlman. Brought to you by the Dis-Chem Foundation, caring for the community on 702.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, proud sponsor of the Absa Africa Financial Markets Index 2025.
The Money Show.
Investment School.
Vincent Anthony Raja, CEO and co-founder at Differential Capital. We're talking tonight why global diversification matters in today's markets. Your questions from voice notes probably best, 072 702 1702. You can call as well on 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. Vincent, underneath all of this, we haven't even mentioned it yet, is geopolitical risk. And if we look at what's happening with trade wars, the meeting that happened today between Trump and Xi, global politics is probably having a bigger role in investment decisions than it ever has. And it's also, I would suggest, if you're a Canadian aluminium exporter, making investment decisions, some of them almost impossible.
Very important to bear in mind. Again, let's call it since the 80s, the fall of the Berlin Wall, Glasnost, the world trended in one direction, sort of accepting one sort of common idea amongst many countries. And in that you can even include China, But right now, countries are trying to do what's best for themselves. So this polarization is important. And it's exacerbated by countries' balance sheets that are not strong. So there's a very experienced hedge fund manager by the name of Ray Dalio, and he writes about these major cycles that happens. And the scary one is that, when countries get into points where they overlever it, and the US, one could argue, has high amounts of debt, Europe, etc. What happens next is a currency war, which, when you see interest rates dropping, that happens, but that can be followed by a hot war, kinetic war. And we can see pockets of that happening around the world, right? So I think those components, again, add further risk to the mix. So again, if you're an aluminium manufacturer in Canada, or, I don't know, a copper smelter, somewhere in Africa or in China, I think the considerations for who your client base is going to be, all of that becomes more complex. And as an investor into these businesses, someone as simple as investing in a fruit business in the Western Cape, and where they, what's going to impact them, all of those become, add risks to the mix that weren't there before. Certainly over the last 10 years. So all of this, all of these factors make investing a lot more complicated. Again, because we're going through this inflection point.
Fine to be a gold producer or a platinum producer in South Africa, it would seem, because everybody wants it. There's also the issue around what I suppose you would, if you had to sum it up, you would call sectoral diversification across borders. So you've got tech in the US, you've got manufacturing in Asia, you've got resources in Africa. All of those are going to be involved in the same supply chain. It's going to be designed in California, made in China with coltan from the DRC. You can be exposed to all of those things.
Yeah. And those are the sectors that probably have tailwinds. What about sectors that, are probably going to be wiped out by some of these productivity gains? So if there's certain things that I worry about, like, let's call it the industry of translation in a world where AI can do that really well. If you think about it, there's quite a few industries and sectors that are going to be very much at risk. And then you've got sectors where there's a lot of questions around, like, I think about this a lot. Like 5 years ago, the whole work from home trend was possibly going to destroy the office sector. But, it looks like everyone's back and no one's built a new office in a long time. So maybe there's, so again, there's these pockets of interesting sectors that I think, could also come alive despite all of these mega trends, So I think trying to think about, let's call it broadly, which sectors are going to benefit from them. I think the way you've characterized them is right. Your Chinese manufacturing, people exposed to that, the commodities, the AI is one, but then there's a myriad of subsectors which I think are important. One that I like to follow a lot in the US is the security, when I talk about IT security industry, that is going to become a much more complex world to be in. And I think those kind of services will become incredibly valuable,
And I mean, whoever has them wins. So suddenly the value is massive.
Yeah.
And I mean, Putin said they tested a nuclear-powered torpedo today. So, I mean, that field is moving. There's also a correlation breakdown. So some assets, some things will move differently in the event of a crisis. Some things will move one way while everything else is moving the other way. You would need to find those things. You need to have some of them in your portfolio. You'll need to have something that's, I suppose, in a way, maybe a little bit defensive, if that's the right word.
Yeah, defensive is one aspect of looking at it. But let's just focus a little bit on correlation. What does it mean when we say two asset classes are correlated? It means that when one goes up, the other tends to follow it to some extent. And similarly, when one goes down, the other tends to go down as well. That's when we say two assets are highly correlated. So when you're trying to put together a portfolio, you can reduce your volatility of your portfolio and reduce the risk by ensuring you invest in assets that are not highly correlated with each other. Now, when you're only looking at two asset classes, it's kind of easy to do the math in your head. But once you start looking at 7 or 8 and across geographies, it makes things a lot more complicated. You can't do that. Even on a spreadsheet, it's kind of difficult.
Mm-hmm. And then for South Africans, for us here, what do you need to sort of do to get exposed to all of this and sort of avoid the risk? I mean, it's the obvious question, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you avoid the risk? Invest safely.
So, Stephen, I came across a very cool tool on the internet, but I think it's the concept that I want to share with your listeners. Is there are tools that help you look at, let's call it the range of themes that we've discussed today, and I think most people kind of get a sense of what they are. So they're ETFs that will give you exposure to gold, to commodities, to US tech, to European stocks, to Asian stocks, to Chinese manufacturing, right? But the question is, what proportion of your portfolio should you put into what? And that becomes kind of difficult, really difficult to do in your mind. And you can say, okay, maybe I put 5% here, but again, it's those thumbsuck rules can also be dangerous. So what a useful tool that I found is Visual Portfolio, and what it does is it It's a simple tool that says if you've got a range of asset classes that you potentially want to invest in, it'll tell you for a desired level of return. And again, it's based on history, what your portfolio mix should roughly look like. And it's those kind of tools online, perhaps even a good financial advisor can help you with, because, I think the world is going to be more complex from an investing perspective than it was before. And diversifying is not going to be as simple as it was before.
And so you need humans to do it, not AI.
Yeah. Look, that's a very good point you make, because AI depends on historical data.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to consider a lot more. So, things that could have been correlated in the past might not be as correlated going into the future.
It's about the insight, isn't it? Vincent
100%.
Anthony Raja, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate that. The CEO and co-founder at Differential Capital.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud sponsor of the ABSA Africa Financial Markets Index 2025.
Well, U.S. markets still, I think, digesting everything that's come from Trump and Xi and interest rates today. The Dow Jones is up 0.22%, the Nasdaq down 0.97%, the S&P 500 down 0.44%. Aubrey is next. We'll be with you tomorrow. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Zingisa Chirwa. Deputy President Paul Mashatile says fighting crime in the country should not be politicized. He says the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry and Parliament's Ad Hoc Committee into Police Corruption have revealed glaring weaknesses within the SAPS.